do this. Today I'm going to show you how to collect material for an herbarium specimen for these Opuntia Engelmannii. And so I have my tongs, and I have my knife right here. And so these things can be pretty tricky to collect with the glochids and the spines. And so it's important to have these tongs. You're going to come in here and you're going to find the best material, right, is we'll have reproductive material growing on it, so either fruits or flowers. And so let's say we'll pick this cladode right here, and we'll grab it with the tongs and go to the base of the cladode with the knife, and you're just gonna slice right through. Sometimes it takes a little bit. There we go. And we lost a little bit of that, but we can just put it in the bag. And so I always bring a paper bag because we don't fillet it on the spot usually. And so we get a paper bag and throw it in there. Any material that dropped off, throw it in there, and then later on we'll fillet this and make a nice herbarium specimen out of it. All right, so we've been in the desert for a few days now. We have our lovely Opuntia basilaris that we've collected. And so what we want to do to first get started is, of course, label our paper that we're going to be pressing this in. I'm going to label this with my collection number there. And then because we're going to be filleting succulents and preparing succulents, we're going to lay down a piece of parchment paper, and that's going to keep our drying specimen from sticking to the newspaper. So now, of course, we're dealing with something that's pretty nasty in terms of, something you don't want to get on your hands. So I'm going to use something to aid me here, and I have a fillet knife just because a fillet knife works really beautifully for preparing different types of species of cacti, especially these Opuntias that have the flattened stem segments. And so I'm just going to go through and fillet this, making sure not to come out on either one of the sides until I get to the actual apex of the stem segment. So let's just go through here on both sides, kind of like if you're filleting a fish or something. Okay, all the way out to the apex. Then we're going to try to go through the fruit. Oftentimes they fall off. Let's see if we can get all the way through this guy, make a cross section there. If not, we can always come back and finish that up. We have these really massive seeds, which we're also going to want to make sure to get into the press. Okay, once inside, we actually have a lot of cortical tissue here, so lots of parenchymatous cells that are filled with water. That's going to slow down the process of drying. So I'm going to try to remove the bulk of those. So, see that here? This is just extra material that we don't need. I'm going to throw that away, and you can see the beautiful vascular tissue there. Basically want to cut these down to the vascular tissue so you can dry them out that much faster. And these are going to go directly into the press, facing down on the parchment paper, so that way they're not going to stick to the newspaper as they start to dry out. Of course, being very careful not to get glochids all over our hands. And then we close it up, and we put it in the press, and we go to the next one. Okay, so now we're going to try something a little more difficult. This is one of our Choyas, Cylindropuntia echinocarpa. Of course, they're cylindrical, but what we're going to want to do is fillet these in half, just the way we did the Opuntia earlier. And of course, this is not something you're ever going to want to grab with your hand because it is not going to let go. And oftentimes we'd be working with larger stem segments than this and sort of a larger piece of the stem, but just for ease and demonstration, we're going to use these smaller segments. So essentially what I'm going to do, start at the base of these stem segments and work my way up, trying to maintain these segments totally together. Sometimes one will come off like that just did, which is perfectly fine. But we have to get these filleted in half like this, otherwise they will not dry out. And so, of course, any measurements you might need to take will have to be done before you do this, because obviously we're going to totally lose that three-dimensionality to the specimen. So some of the smaller choyas, let's say such as Cylindropuntia leptocaulus or Ramosissima, you can put those directly into the press and those will dry actually quite well, relatively rapidly. Sometimes you could put some pinholes in those
and they will dry out quite fast. So we have all of these seeds here that we want to make sure that we get into the press, and if some of those fall out, we can actually put them in a little packet and dry those as we need to. Just making sure that they stay with the specimen. I'm going to put this into the press like so. And it's kind of like cooking. And then we're just going to close this newspaper and put the cardboard on top. And ready to dry.